We're talking about changing the outcomes for countries, for economies, for very large major projects that take years to plan, years to execute.
So, Rob, tell me, normally logistics is about moving stuff from A to B through land, sea, air. How does this differ? How does this differentiate itself?
So you use the word different, and that's kind of what I want to focus on is it's not that project logistics is more special, or perhaps it is more specialized, but it is just very different than what you call normal logistics. So we're not talking about moving shoes for Christmas here. We're talking about changing the outcomes for countries, for economies, for very large major projects that take years to plan, years to execute, but they have a hard start and end date.
Who is it for, this type of logistics?
Most of the people who take this type of thing the most seriously are governments, for sure. So many of these larger projects are government funded. There are larger renewable energy producers or developers, so wind farms, solar, renewable fuels, that kind of thing. So certainly a lot of the energy industry overall, certain factories or large-scale production facilities that need to be built. And those are the big ones. The interesting part about project logistics is we actually think backwards. So when we think about what our customers want done, or what generally participants in the project logistics niche of the industry think about, they start with the end state, not the beginning. And when we think about that, we think about when a project is over, what's going to look like. It's going to be a wind farm with blades spinning in the breeze and grass, or it's going to be a new factory with thousands of new jobs for wherever that gets built. So we think about what we need to deliver as an outcome, and we go backwards. And it's not as much about the specific types of transport, though those are very important. It's about planning for what needs to get done at the end.
How do you set up, projects like this? How do you get this to work?
So we have to consider almost all project logistics supply chains or project supply chains in terms of 5 key themes. And the first one I've kind of already mentioned, it's about schedule. So where I'd say normal supply chains have an unending flow, or we want them to anyway, project supply chains have a very specific start and end date, so we call them time definite. And in the same way you get a time definite parcel delivered. They're also convergent, so we think about project areas or project job sites. So we have global origins, many different origins, and a single destination. For the most part, the participants in this market segment like to think of projects as end-to-end in terms of transport, so it's not very fragmented, and it's better to get a overall top-down control on things, so we don't think of fragments of the supply chain, we think of the entire supply chain. They're very much integrated. They involve all sorts of transport, whether that's anything from parcel size to ultra-heavy lift ships, offshore operations, major austere areas that are very hard to get to. The assets are quite specialized, and they're very much integrated, so they all have to come together.
How big is this?
You really need an amazingly skilled team to run the supply chain that produces these things. And to date, they are not unknown, but little known. And I think what's important to me, what's exciting to me about this is the way you see a lot of these major news stories has a supply chain behind it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that brought into light more than it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much does this change?
It changes countries, Chris. It really does. When you think about the scale and longevity of a lot of the projects that, I guess a lot of the outcomes of these projects, they last for decades. So when you think about a 200 wind farm installation, either onshore or offshore, that can power half of a small country in some places, and certainly it does here in Scandinavia. So I think we really look at what we do in terms of the gravity of it. It's whether it's delivering humanitarian aid and perhaps medical aid into conflict zones or types of disaster areas, or it's helping build a wind farm in some remote area of the Amazon, that really changes people's lives. And I think the more we develop, or the more the industry develops niche capabilities for this, the better it's going to be for everybody, because it makes progress easier. But this type of work drives progress forward in ways that perhaps other supply chains do not.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tris.